Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Today, I'm excited to have Ralph Johnson, CISO for the state of Washington, back for his fourth Tech Tables podcast. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you. It looks like I'm going to be one of your leaders here soon.
It's coming. Mary Craig, CIO for the Washington State Department of Services for the Blind and IPMA board member. Erik, Sandie, Strategic Account Manager at Island. Welcome to the Public Sector Show by TechTables.
Thanks, Joe.
Excited to have you all here. Ralph, for those who don't know you, they might because there's 3 other episodes at this point, but for those who don't know you, give us a quick intro.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ralph Johnson. As Joe said, I'm the State Chief Information Security Officer for Washington State. I have been the Chief Information Security Officer for King County, Washington, and Los Angeles County, California, as well as a newspaper that we will leave nameless at the moment. Been in government sector for roughly 35 years, with the exception of that short time that I was with that newspaper, and 29 of those have been in information security.
Erik,
Sandie. I'm account manager at Island, and I've been here almost a year learning about the enterprise browser space, and I've been in tech sales for about 15 years.
Great. Mary?
I'm the Chief Information Officer at the Department of Services for the Blind. I'm also Vice Chair of the Information Professional Management Association. I was a network consultant in the mid-90s. One of my customers was the Department of Services for the Blind, and I fell in love with assistive technologies and the people that work at Services for the Blind. And in 1999, I joined DSB as an employee, and in December, I will have been at the agency for 25 years.
Wow, congrats. That's awesome. And Mary, I actually want to start with you. You and Ralph got to go on a tour before this event. I'd love to hear a little bit about that and some of the technologies that you were able to share.
It was really cool to be able to take Ralph back to DSB. And Ralph was a customer of my agency back in the 90s, I believe. Yeah. And so it was really great to bring him in. He met with my agency director. He talked with some of our program staff. And he got to see some of the students that attend our orientation and training center. And that's one of my favorite programs in my agency because it adds great value. A lot of people lose their vision in their middle ages or suddenly. And how are you going to adapt to life as a person with a visual disability? They come to our orientation and training center. They learn Braille. They learn computer skills. They learn orientation and mobility, how to navigate city streets, buses, how to live independently, how to cook, how to clean, all the skills that they need to live independently. And so it's just a really great program. And I think I shared with you when I first met you about a man I met about 20 years ago who came to the OTC. It's actually not uncommon for somebody to lose their vision and to really spend a couple of years just depressed and not being able to realize how they can fully live life as a visually impaired person. And they come to the OTC and they get those skills. This one gentleman came, and he was, I think, in his late 40s, and he really felt like his life was over. And they asked him when he came, what did you want to do? What have you always wanted to do in life? And he said, I wanted to be a motorcycle mechanic, but that's never going to happen now. And when he left our orientation and training center, he was in an internship at a motorcycle shop. That was a really great example of how transformative the work in our orientation and training center can be. Another great example of the work we do that is really exciting to me is our youth employment services. And every summer, we bring kids from all over. I think the ages are 15 through 20, 15 through 21, I don't know exactly. But these kids come to Seattle, they get jobs for the summer. They get to stay on campus at the University of Washington and live in dorms. They get jobs and they learn how to travel on the bus system back and forth. They have social activities at night. And it's a really great opportunity for them to have independence. And I got to attend one of the graduation ceremonies probably about 10 years ago. And there was this young girl who spoke, and I was just blown away that this 17-year-old girl could get up in front of this crowd and speak. But she talked about her experience, and she said, I live in a rural area, and I thought I was going to live with my parents for the rest of my life. But then I came to this YES program. I got a job for the summer. I learned how to travel on the bus system. I got to do all these fun social activities. And hearing her speak, it was like her whole world opened up to her. She's like, I realized I can move to an urban area. I can get a job. I can live independently. I'm not going to be stuck in this rural area living with my parents for the rest of my life. So those are some of the really powerful stories that help me really believe in the work that my agency does.
Yeah, I love that. Ralph, before we move on to the question that I really want to ask you, I do want to say I love that the two of you got to go on the tour. I really wanted to go. Mary invited me, and I was so bummed that I couldn't make it. Just probably love to hear your experience that you had with Mary.
Yeah, it was great. As Mary said, I used to be a client of Department of Services for the Blind. For those of you who don't know me, I am legally blind. I have been legally blind my entire life. So I can only see out of one eye, and it is within the bounds of what's known as legal blindness. Now, the law sets a particular level that says if you are beyond this particular level, there are certain things you cannot do. Drive a car, which I get it, but I don't let other people define me in terms of what I can do. I define myself, and with the exception of where the law says I can't do something, right? Now, that doesn't mean I don't know how to operate a motor vehicle. I do. I have driven a car. I just don't drive it on the freeway. But yesterday was a great experience because I have not seen a lot of the assistive technology that exists for visually impaired individuals now. And by the way, I don't like to use the word disability or handicap because those terms are diminishing. It means that we don't have the ability to do something. We are differently abled. And I learned that from a junior high school teacher of mine. When I was young and in 7th grade, I had this science teacher that he took me under his wing. And he said, look, I'm not going to accept the fact that you can't do it. He said, we're going to find a way for you to do it. And he says, maybe you're going to do it differently. And granted, there will be some limitations. He was a science teacher. I can't use a microscope. We tried lots of different things. He even managed to get a projector that connected to a microscope and printed it up on the wall enormously. So that's a piece of assistive technology. Now, remember, this was 1972, okay? Gives you an idea how old I am. But the stuff that I saw yesterday was just absolutely amazing. And I'd never really used a lot of assistive technology because I've been this way all my life. I have found ways to cope. I have larger monitors, so on and so forth. But they introduced me to a couple of things yesterday that I plan to acquire because I think they're going to make life a little bit better for me. And that was great. It was also great to be able to talk to some of the students, some of the teachers at this, what'd you call it, the Orientation Training Center. I met the teacher that teaches these people how to cook. Now, I've been cooking since I was a kid, but I grew up this way. I don't know what it would be like if I suddenly lost all my sight. I don't know how I'd cope because I've got coping mechanisms that work for me the way they are today. But if I suddenly lost the sight that I have left in my one eye, how would I cope? I might have to go to the OTC and learn how to cook myself, right? So it was great to be able to talk to them. They had a graduation from the OTC yesterday. I met some of the students, a couple of the students. We got to have a potluck lunch with them. And I met some of the people that work there. And we just had some great conversations. And it was quite an eye-opening experience. One of these days, Mary is going to take me down to Vancouver, since I can't drive, I rely on her, to visit the Washington State School for the Blind and the Washington State School for the Deaf and Hearing Impaired. Accessibility and working with the differently abled is something that's very important to me. It's important to our CIO, and it should be important to Washington State. And I know we're going to talk about some of that because it is important to Washington State.
Can I just point out the passion here? It is amazing, Mary, and your passion for this. And I was talking to you off camera and mic, and that's just an amazing, and to think about just going blind in your 40s would be, it's unthinkable and devastating. And like, it would be a hopeless situation. I would like personally, I would think. And to know that there's services, and I live in a state that is ran by people like you, it makes me hopeful and glad and grateful, I guess. So thank you.
Erik, since we're here, let's just transition to Island.
No, I don't know. That's incredible. I just want to point out how incredible that is.
No, so let's talk about Island's innovative approach to the enterprise browser. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So first off, everybody I've talked to at a state agency has no idea what an enterprise browser is. So that's been fun, like just coming here and educating. I work a lot in the private sector, just full disclosure. And Gartner says by 2032 that every major organization, every enterprise organization will have adopted an enterprise browser. So it just shows you where we're going as an industry. And Island just happens to be at the forefront of it. If you think about what is a browser, right? It's it's a consumer application. It is meant to better market to you, it's better market to your constituents, to your citizens, it's better market to your employees at the state. I think there's this like thought exercise that you can do that if the browser were to come out today, imagine that like the browser hasn't been out since 2000 or the 90s, whenever it came out, Netscape, I don't know. And it just came out today. And these two monopolies, Microsoft and Google, came out with it and said, here you go, all of your applications. This is a super application that's going to host all your applications, all your business applications, and it's free. When you ask a question, Ralph, to them, why it's free?
Oh, yeah.
And
especially if it's coming from Microsoft. Oh, did I say that?
And I think it's a wonder. And I think when you got into the details of it, why it's free, and because in fact that your employees are in fact the customer, are what they're monetizing, you would categorically say, no way would we accept it. And what have we done for the last 25 years and 30 years in this industry is we've caged this consumer applications with firewalls, DLPs, proxies, all these different technologies to basically cage this beast of an application and try to make it secure, make this consumer application secure. And it's the number one used application in your enterprise. And 5 years ago, my company took the Chromium open source project, which is, by the way, the second biggest open source project in the world. And we took out all the consumer features, all the ad trackers. In fact, we have a built-in ad blocker into it, and we do not allow anybody to track your users. And we took all the things that surround the browser, that you currently surround the browser with DLP, break and inspect, all of those proxies, web filters, and we just built it in seamlessly into the browser. And the market it's had this wild reception to it. And some of the top reactions are like, hey, why has nobody thought of this yet? And so how does this have to do with accessibility? Why am I on an accessibility podcast with some of the leading minds?
That is a bloody good question.
That is a great question. We work with some locally and across the nation. We work with some of the biggest organizations and state agencies and schools, and accessibility has to be built into our product. And Chromium we're standing on the shoulders of giants with accessibility, right? We're WCAG 2.1 right now. We voluntarily went into an audit in July 2023, and we're working on WCAG 2.2. And it's not just, we don't want to be just as good as Chrome or Edge or Safari. Our goal as a company is to blow them out of the water in terms of accessibility. And later this year, we'll be relaunching our website with an accessibility field to it. But I can tell you, I'm personally working with a company out of here that has iPads in every one of their stores, and across 10,000, they have 10,000 stores, and they have 200,000 employees. And guess what? They need accessibility. It's mandated. And I actually think there's a second part to it. The state of Washington, state of California, they write laws, right? Privacy laws to protect their citizens, right? And what's Google's number one revenue source? Ad sales. And you know what they do? They lobby your governor. You think you're ever going to get them to take out ad trackers out of Google Chrome and stop tracking your users or your citizens? I just don't think that's going to happen. And beyond that, I think we're coming across, like, you have an aging population in Washington, And you have the boomers are aging and they're in dementia and there's Alzheimer's and there's all these things. And there's no amount of cybersecurity training you can give to a person with dementia that will not have them click on a phishing email. And you see it all the time, news articles of boomers getting drained of their bank accounts from clicking on phishing emails. And what's the job of the state? It's to protect the consumer, to protect their citizens. The citizen is sitting right there. That's the empty seat in the room, right? And I think you'll see at the end of this, and like beyond the enterprise, that I posit that the state will take control of a browser. And whether it's us, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I think they'll take matters into their own hands and they will put guardrails within a browser that has WCAG is putting out a portal. They're redoing their portal. Mm-hmm. Instead of the state portal and the county portal, it's everywhere. To get to state and local resources is everywhere. Instead of that, why don't you have an identity-based access to a browser that has every resource based on the person's identity, and then based on who they are and what accessibility needs that they have, that browser will be catered to them. And if they have dementia, guess what? We're not going to allow them to put in their credit card information into that browser. That's my idea. I'm done. Thank you.
So Mary, changes to Title II of the ADA have introduced new accessibility requirements for public website and mobile apps. Walk us through how these changes are impacting state and local governments.
I was thrilled when a little over a year ago, Department of Justice released the proposed rule set because this has highlighted accessibility. We now have more people interested in accessibility than we've ever had before. Title II of the ADA is really focused on external websites and mobile apps. Now, in my opinion, if your website and mobile app are developed properly, they're accessible out of the box. If you follow good programming processes, your system should be accessible out of the box. But now we're having people looking at their websites going, wait a minute, is my website accessible? What do I need to do to improve the accessibility of my website? And my own agency, we started a project back in December, and we're using human-centered design to ensure that our website is accessible. And human-centered design is all about accessibility because it puts the user in the center of the design process. So I'm really excited for the increased interest now for accessibility within the state. And I think that we're going to make headway, and we're not just going to stop at making sure that our external websites and our mobile apps are accessible, but we're going to go even further to ensure that all of our services, our forms, our documents, our communications are accessible to everyone.
Okay, I really like that. So this brings up the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 is the standard. From your perspective, why is it important for state and local governments to adhere to these guidelines? And maybe what advice would you give for other agencies across the United States?
WCAG, as they're often referred to, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. People may not realize, but the first version was released in May of 1999. So these have been around for a long time. It's a global guideline, so used across the world to ensure accessibility. These guidelines cover things like ensuring images on your website have a tag. Back in the day, when a screen reader user would land on an image, oftentimes it would say something like image 54378, which told the blind user absolutely nothing about what that image is. It is really easy to label an image, especially in Microsoft products. You just right-click and label the image. And you can say image of a red. That's one of the guidelines. There are a multitude of guidelines within the WCAG. Things like if you have a form, ensuring that you don't have a timeout on that form because some users may take longer to complete that form. Color guidelines. There are all sorts of guidelines within there that help ensure that a website is accessible. The other benefit to those guidelines, I was recently talking to an agency director. They implemented a new system, but in their contract documents, they didn't state must be compliant with WCAG 2.1. They said must be accessible, and then they listed various. And so when they went to deploy their solution, they found it wasn't fully accessible. They actually had to delay implementation by, I think, more than a year to fix issues. Some of them were in the contract, but some of them were missing from the contract. Having that set of guidelines gives all of us the ability, when we're writing contracts, to say, must be compliant with WCAG 2.1 or soon to be 2.2 to ensure that they're fully accessible to everyone.
That's great. And what are a few, you were sharing some of the resources with me. What were some of the resources, I forget them off the top of my head, but where you can go online and check to see how accessible your websites are, for example?
WebAIM is a really popular one. It's free.
Okay.
And you can Google website checking tools. There's some paid ones. There are some free ones. There are other resources beyond that. Like here in the Northwest, we have the Northwest ADA Center. And every state in the nation has an ADA center. I think there's the Midwest ADA Center. These are organizations set up by the federal government to provide input and resources to Title II agencies. So that's another good resource. And then we have a lot of vendors too. Here locally, we have a company named Anthrotech, and they specialize in human-centered design. The company president is actually a professor at the University of Washington who teaches human-centered design. And there's somebody who we've been interacting with to make the DSB website more human-centered design. So a lot of resources out there if people just go out and start doing some research.
Yeah, I love that. I think the first step is that awareness piece. So as more folks become aware, then they'll enter that research stage, right? Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Ralph, ensuring that organizations meet the new accessibility standards by the DOJ can be challenging. Awareness, trying to get everyone on board. What strategies are you looking to implement at the state level to ensure compliance, and how are you using your leadership role to push accessibility forward?
As Mary said, if a website is properly designed from the onset, not only is it going to be secure by design, but it's going to be accessible by design. Of course, I had to throw in the secure part in there because I am a CISO. So build those concepts into it at the very beginning. We're going to be looking at conducting audits and assessments of our multitude of websites. We're going to be looking to provide training for managers and content developers on accessibility and these guidelines and how they can become accessible. And Mary's passion, of course, is visual impairment, as of course mine is as well. But we also have to consider those individuals who have hearing deficits, right? And other cognitive deficits as well, because these facilities and resources need to be available to them as well. So look at that. So we're going to be doing a lot of different things. One of the things that we are considering is hiring a chief accessibility officer to work in WATEC, to work with agencies to coordinate these activities across the state. That's one other step that we're looking at doing.
Wow, what a great transition. Mary, you've been observing Colorado's approach to accessibility. Maybe Ralph will start recruiting from Colorado. I don't know. Put that on the podcast. How has Colorado's strategy influenced your efforts in Washington State? And are there any specific programs or policies that you really like or that catch in your eye?
A few years ago, I had a great opportunity to attend California State University's accessibility conference that they host every year. They call it CSUN. And I met people from Colorado, and I was so impressed with the efforts that they have made there. One of the things that really helped Colorado is they had legislative and governor support. And that's something that we're hoping that Title II of the ADA helps boost that support here in Washington State. In Colorado, they have a unique environment because they have centralized IT, which makes it a little easier to apply policies throughout the state. We're decentralized here in Washington State, so it's a little bit more of a challenge. We're looking at what Colorado has done, and we're trying to improve upon our own accessibility policy. And I do want to share Bill Kehoe, our amazing state CIO. When I had the opportunity to first meet him, I sat down with him and I talked about accessibility. And I'm going to be honest, normally when I talk about accessibility, IT leaders, you should go talk to anyone else, basically. And Bill Kehoe looked me in the eye and he said, I understand why accessibility is important. And then he told me about this amazing CISO that he had in King County. and that he was so amazing, he recruited him down to LA County when he was down in LA County. And I'm really grateful to say that amazing CISO is now Washington State CISO. And in my opinion, we have the best state CIO and the best CISO that we've ever had. And through Bill's advocacy, we've been able to create an accessibility community of practice in Washington State. We've been able to create an accessibility advisory committee in Washington State, bringing together not just accessibility advocates, but accessibility experts. And we're working on rewriting the state's accessibility policy. And it's a really comprehensive policy, and we're going to have to right-size it a little bit because we did ask for everything in the kitchen sink, and we are getting a little pushback, so we're right-sizing it now. But I'm really excited for what that's going to bring because it is going to increase equity in the state, and it's going to help ensure that people with disabilities have the systems in place that they need within the state for the state to be a top employer of people with disabilities.
But Mary, I'm gonna counsel you not to back off too much on that accessibility policy because we can't write the policy for just what we can do today. We need to be looking at the future and where we should be in the future. While you may not be able to reach it today, we've got a plan for that future. And one of the things that we've done in some other policies at the state is we've said, this is what it is today. But then we have a section in there that says, by X date, we will be here. And it gives us that forward momentum so that we're not looking at a policy that's implemented and put in place that we can just meet today and we're not going to move forward from there. Yeah. If there's a place we need to be in the future, we can't be there now for whatever reason, but we want to go further. We want to put that in the policy as well.
Yeah, and that's great guidance. In fact, I was critical of the previous accessibility policy. And when I was giving that criticism, I discovered the person I was meeting with was the author of that previous accessibility policy. And he was like, this was really all I could get approved. And that has been a conversation, and it's really great guidance. Thank you.
I'm going to clip that part for Bill Kehoe. Just send it to him. Hey, Bill.
There you go.
High praise. Yeah. No, I actually ran into him when I was in Olympia, when I was at WCAG. Yeah. You made it down to WCAG? Or yeah, you made it down to Olympia? I was like, Bill, I'm everywhere.
Joe goes everywhere.
Joe goes everywhere, yeah. From Olympia to Tallahassee and everything in between. Mary, can you touch on the Aira service? It's been a game changer.
Yes, so there are a variety of technical solutions available to people with visual disabilities. And I met the president of Aira at CSUN a few years ago. I recently discovered that in Colorado, any citizen of Colorado can use Aira for free. There's some limitations, like I think 1 hour, up to an hour or something. There's some limitations on it. What Aira is, there's a solution called Be My Eyes. And that's an app you can install on your phone. It's free. I believe I'm not sure if that was a Microsoft product, but it's a free product that anybody can install. Say you have a document in front of you, you have visual disabilities, you can't read it. You can use Be My Eyes, and it will call a volunteer. And in fact, one of my CIO colleagues stepped out of a meeting one day to take a call from someone on Be My Eyes to help them get dressed for a job interview. And so you need to check to see if your hair looks good. You need to check that your outfit is matching. I had a colleague one time, a blind woman I worked with, who I came into her office and she was wearing striped pants and a blouse that had circles all over it. Now, this was the 1990s. And I said, oh my gosh. And she's, don't say it. I've already been told by people, somebody marked my clothes incorrectly. If she had that Be My Eyes app, she could have had somebody check to see what she was wearing. Taking that a step further is Aira. And Aira is a professional service where the person on the other end of the video call is someone who's passed background checks. You get confidentiality. So it's something that can be used in a work environment. It's something that if you're reading something that's confidential, you don't have to worry about the person who is guiding you through the document or guiding you using the app. The state of Colorado has a great video on their website, and I highly recommend you check out Colorado's accessibility website because they have a lot of great information there. They have a video. The woman's name is Teresa. I've met her. She's incredible. She's a blind woman The video shows her, she shows up at the Colorado Capitol. And we all know how Capitol buildings are with their mazes and trying to navigate through. She uses Aira, and the operator walks her through the building until she gets to the lieutenant governor's office. And so it's a game changer for people who have visual disabilities, because this gives them the equity of not having to wander around looking for the Braille on a doorway.
If there's even Braille on that doorway.
Or the Braille's correct.
One of the apps that they showed me yesterday, and sorry to jump in here, but it's somewhat similar to that. It's called CAI, I believe.
Seeing AI.
Seeing AI. I downloaded it on my phone yesterday just because I wanted to play with it. I can point it at a sheet of paper, and it will read me that sheet of paper. Should we try it? Let's see what it says about Joe here.
Oh no.
So
Short text.
It's got a feature here, and I can pick person.
Person.
I can point it at Joe.
One face near center, 2 feet away. Processing.
Take his picture.
35-year-old man with brown hair wearing glasses looking happy.
That's what it says about Joe.
Looking happy. That's right.
So how old are you, Joe?
I'm 35.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that to me yesterday, and it took a picture of me, and it said a 63-year-old man. I don't know if I was looking happy or not, but I'm 63. Incredible, huh?
That was pretty incredible. On the fly. That's impressive.
It does a whole lot more than just that, but that was one of the more impressive little tricks.
This episode's great because we're going to be linking to so many resources in the show notes. It's going to be the ultimate show note podcast. There's going to be countless links in here. And then I'll probably, because I'm super geeky, I'm going to be trying. I might even try it on Jack and Annabelle.
Yeah, and that's a free app, by the way.
That makes me nervous now.
Yeah, we downloaded your photo to some AI engine.
It's okay. Happy 35-year-old Joe is everywhere on the internet. So I'm not too worried. Any final thoughts as we wrap up, Ralph?
Accessibility is highly important to Washington State, as it should be to every state and every company. These DOJ guidelines only, and Mary will correct me if I'm wrong here, but they only apply to government. They don't apply to private industry. And private industry has more websites out there than we do, right? They don't apply to Amazon.com. So if I don't know how accessible Amazon's website is. I seem to manage it okay, but I don't know how accessible it is to people with other impairments. But it should be just as important to private industry, to nonprofits, and especially nonprofits, because a lot of those nonprofits support these people with impairments. If you're not familiar with the DOJ guidelines and your government, you better get familiar with it, because there are going to be potential penalties associated with that. And if you are not government, if you're listening to this and you're not government, even though it's a government podcast, go look at them. Go look at them. Think about your customer base, the people that you want to give you money for stuff, right? Because if your website is not accessible, they can't shop with you, Nordstrom's. No, sorry.
Bill's a fan of Nordstrom's. If those,
I was teasing Nordstrom's. It's a local company. I don't know. I honestly don't know if Nordstrom's is accessible or not, but
We can get Nicole Ford on this podcast probably. That's their CISO over there, if you want.
yeah, I know Nicole. Yeah.
Eric, 30 seconds.
Only 30? I at least, no, I don't know.
Final closing thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Bill Kehoe is right when he wants Washington to be the most innovative state in the country. And you do that by being bold. I think when it comes to what we're doing at Island and what really anybody in private industry is doing, it's all about the end user. And if you forget about the end user, you've lost your North Star. And even when when you are instilling security at the edge, right? If the end user experience is terrible, they're gonna find ways around it, right? If you find ways, if you're not delivering an excellent end user experience, and that's through accessibility, through productivity, it's all of that really counts.
And that's what user-centered design is all about. It's about the user experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally agree. I think one of the most important things that I've learned in collaborating with the people that I've been able to meet here today, the last couple days, is one of the important things. We have a lot of companies that have products called overlays, and it's a product that you add to a website, and the intention is to make that website accessible. And we have a lot of people thinking that's the simple solution to meeting Title II of the ADA. And I would argue that you do not want to look at an overlay. You want to do an assessment and correct the issues with your website. I was speaking with an accessibility expert from Department of Health this morning, and I said, hey, is this a good Band-Aid? And he said, let me tell you about what we did at Department of Health. The vaccine finder wasn't accessible. We had a complaint. We put an overlay on it. And removing that overlay took me 2 years because there were so many links within, and it's not in the overlay company's best interest to help you remove it. So he argues against the use of overlays for a multitude of reasons. It can cause other issues for, say, screen reader users. They've had a lot of issues. So I highly encourage people, get an assessment, spend the money on an assessment, see if you have accessibility issues. You might not have major accessibility issues. I wrote a little program to check a website, and I was checking a variety of state websites just to try to get an idea how bad is the situation at the state of Washington. And what I found was there weren't many accessibility issues that I found. So people don't know what they don't know. Do an assessment, see if you have a problem, and see if those issues are easily addressed. And they may be an easy solution to get resolved. Maybe you just need to label your graphics.
One of the things that somebody told me not too long ago is that most people think accessibility is expensive because they're thinking about ADA and putting in ramps and automatic doors and things like that. It doesn't have to be. Yeah, most of those are already covered, right? Because we've already got the ramps and the doors because ADA's been out since, what, 96, 92, something like that. So most of those are already covered. You've already got that sunk cost. Now we're looking at, in particular, in this case, your websites. Getting someone in to fix a website coding issue is not going to be that expensive. Sure, maybe you're paying them $300-400 an hour, but how long is it going to take them to fix that coding issue and republish your website? Not very long. You can probably get it done for a few $1,000s. It's not like you're going to have them have to redesign the entire website. Or maybe that's what you want to do anyway. Maybe it's time to take your 30-year-old website and redesign it and do it right from the start with security and accessibility in mind.
One other point I would like to make is that accessibility is important for a multitude of reasons. But if you end up with a visual disability, technology has leveled the playing field. You've seen the technology that Ralph demoed. The goal is to ensure that our solutions are accessible for those people. And the more we do that, the more it's equality for everyone.
That's fantastic. With that, thank you for coming on the Public Sector Show by TechTables. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.